We now return to Illinois Rising, presented by the Illinois Opportunity Project, the radio show discussing honest truth about Illinois policy and politics. Here's AM 560's Dan Proft.
Dan back with Joe Kaiser on this edition of Illinois Rising. And Joe, in DuPage County, where Republicans need to make their bones, not just in terms of picking up seats in places like Eastern DuPage, if they want to pick up the necessary seats to depose Mike Madigan as House Speaker, but just in terms of having more conservative reform leadership from that most populous Republican county in the state, allegedly, piling up bigger vote spreads between Republicans and Democrats in general elections if you want to win statewide elections. And one of the new leaders, potentially, to do that is a woman named Tonia Khouri, who won her primary for state representative. She is running to fill the seat that is being vacated by retiring State Representative Mike Fortner, one of the 15 surrender Republicans who voted for the 32% income tax hike in 2017. So Khouri replacing Fortner would certainly be an upgrade. And again, in the interest of full disclosure, Tonia was one of the candidates that I PAC'd in my private life as a political activist with the PAC that I operate, and I was pleased to do so. Tonia, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
So what are you had a spirited primary, and you represent an area of DuPage County that includes some demographic changes over the years. The West Chicago area, for example, is much more Latino than it was just 5 or 10 years ago. So the lessons that you learned from your primary campaign and how they inform the kind of general election campaign you'll run.
Well, everybody's paying high property taxes. It doesn't matter what demographic you are or where you live. And that was the main concern I heard from people as I was out knocking on doors and holding town halls, that people are just being taxed to death and they've had enough. And that's one of the main reasons why I want to go down to Springfield. I mean, the reason why I got in the race, you already mentioned, was a 32% income tax hike without any reforms. And I think the key phrase in that sentence is without any reform. And it needs to stop. We have to start looking at the reform side and the spending side of the equation and not just the revenue side. And that resonates with people because people work really hard for their money. And it's just wrong for the government to continually reach into the pockets of the taxpayers to try and solve problems instead of them rolling up their sleeves and making the tough decisions and making real reforms to balance the budget.
Yeah, and in addition to that 32% income tax hike, something that's going to be a big topic of discussion this year and probably moving forward if you're elected is a discussion of a progressive income tax, switching to a progressive income tax structure. What's your view on that whole debate, and what are your thoughts, if you're a state representative, how you'll approach the progressive tax issue?
So I'm so glad you brought that up because this is rearing its ugly head again. If you remember a couple years ago, they were talking about the progressive tax. And as chairman of economic development on the DuPage County board, the second largest county in the state, I felt it necessary to get involved and have the voices heard of the DuPage County taxpayers, because this would be very detrimental to all the small businesses, all the S corporations in the state, and the normal taxpayer. You know, the funny thing is they try and sell this as a rich man's tax. It's not. It's a tax on everyone. It's an unfair tax because the progressive tax progressively punishes people with the more successful they are. The flat tax is the wealthier you are, the more taxes you pay already. They're already burdened. And if we keep overburdening these taxpayers, they're going to flee. We already have the largest exodus in the nation that made us go down from the fifth largest state to the sixth largest state, right? So all these financial people in the city of Chicago, there's nothing that's keeping them here to go elsewhere. But what I'm most concerned about is the lower income bracket. Because, again, they'll try and sell this as the wealthier people will pay more and the lower income people will pay less. But there's only so much you can tax that higher income, right? That higher bracket. So eventually it will come down to the lower brackets. And that's exactly what happened in California. When they first started, they sold it on lower rates, but over time, you can only tax the top rate so much. So in California, average household income in Illinois is about $60,000. If you were living in California under the progressive tax and you were making that much money, you would be paying 9.3% income tax.
Mm-hmm.
You have to stop looking at the tax side of things and start looking at the spending side of things. So I will be vehemently fighting against that progressive tax. We passed a resolution in DuPage County, and I will fight very hard against it in Springfield.
I want to get your perspective. You wear many hats. One of them is job creator. You and your husband, Joe, have built a very successful business. And one of the things that first attracted me to you as a candidate was the relationship you had with your employees, and some of that was translated into television commercials and stuff during your campaign. But it kind of really informed the kind of entrepreneurs that you both are, the kind of business that you run. And so take off the elected official, the candidate hat, and just talk about this from the perspective of the business that you guys started, the businesses that you run, the employees that you employ. Give us your perspective on the political and policy landscape from that angle, because I think that's where people really want to get insight in terms of thinking about the future of Illinois. If people like the Khouris leave, if they shutter their doors or move their business somewhere else, then there really isn't much future here.
Right. And that's why I'm such a proponent for small businesses, because small businesses create 63% of our net new jobs. And I am all about people working. Jobs change people's lives. I've seen it. And that's why I've done a lot of work with job training of people, but specifically in my private life as a business owner. Like I said, S corporations, taxes are a big deal, and the progressive tax would be very detrimental. But taxes and regulations and red tape, all this affects our businesses. I'll give you a very small example. So we have a service company, and one of our divisions, the technicians need to be licensed by the state of Illinois. Before this year, those licenses cost $40, and they had to be renewed every 6 years, okay? They now, without notice, doubled the cost of that, and instead of renewing every 6 years, dropped it down to every 3 years. So the cost of me licensing my technicians has doubled and has increased twice as much in the next 6 years. So instead of me paying $4,000 to license these technicians, I'm not paying $8,000, twice more than I had to before. What this means and just a small example, is extra costs that I did not know I had to have as a business owner.
Well, right, and the key there too is, and it's not being sold on it's a quality insurance measure or it's a cost of administration measure. It's just a straight up a shakedown. And I wonder if you have conversations about these sort of hidden money grabs by government with your employees and what their understanding of what's going on is.
So my employees range from, everyone makes more than minimum wage, but a low-level worker to managers, right? And again, everyone's paying taxes. I have employees, I think that was specifically on the commercial. So they're more concerned about the taxes than the regulations. But
right.
This single mom with a son that has autism, and every dollar counts in her household to keep going and surviving. So anytime this state makes a money grab, it hurts her just as much as it hurts me, but in different ways. So across the board, people are being taxed to death. People are being, everything that has happened, it's like one more bite, and people just can't take it anymore. And I feel very blessed. I mean, we won the primary. It was a good win. We worked really hard. People really resonated with my message coming from the business side and a homeowner and a mom of three, that I could relate to what they're going through and taking that and being their voice down in Springfield. And I think that's what people are looking for. People are just looking for good, honest people to do what's right. And what's right is people are so thirsty for leaders with integrity, so thirsty for people just to stand up for them and say enough is enough. And that's what I want to do down in Springfield. Just take common sense down there, fiscal sanity. It's not that much to ask for, I don't think.
Yeah, you wouldn't think, but it turns out that it is. She is Tonia Khouri. The website, Tonia Khouri, Tonia, Tonia Khouri, Khouri. ToniaKhouri.com is the website if you want to find out more about her candidacy. DuPage County board member and the Republican nominee for state representative in DuPage County, the western part of DuPage County. Tonia, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you.